Hey, church family. We had week 2 this week of our new sermon series we've called What Is, where I'm answering questions about the Christian faith so that we can understand what we believe and why we believe it. This week we looked at what is the Bible and why we can trust it. It's pretty common these days for people to dismiss Christians as being inconsistent because they follow some of the rules of the Bible and ignore others. The challenge usually sounds something like this. When the Bible talks about certain sexual sins, we quote that. But when the Bible talks about not being able to eat shellfish or not pork, or that you should execute people for breaking the Sabbath, we ignore that and aren't super concerned about that. And so the challenge is we just are picking and choosing what suits us best. Christians and non-Christians alike have a hard time answering this question. I think one helpful way of looking at it, though, at the issue is the same way that the Protestant reformer John Calvin did in the 16th century, when he noticed that the New Testament treated the Old Testament laws in 3 different ways or groupings. There were civil laws, which governed the nation of Israel, encompassing not only behavior, but also punishments for crimes. Then there were ceremonial laws, that kind of governed sacrificial practices and temple practices. And then there were moral laws, which declared what God deemed right and wrong. The 10 Commandments, for instance. Jesus said he has come to fulfill all of the law, meaning he has kept perfectly for us. And so we now no longer come as Christians keeping the law in order to be right or righteous before God. Instead, we keep the law out of an obedience that comes from love and delight in God. However, we are only trying to follow the moral laws of God, not the civil laws or the ceremonial laws, because those were temporary realities meant to govern and guide the people and the nation of Israel. At a time when disease, for example, could wipe out a whole people group, it was important for God to give a command and a law for his people not to touch dead bodies or blood. Or the rules regarding the temple and its practices and how sacrifices should go. We clearly don't need these guiding principles or laws anymore, which is why in Acts 10, God shows Peter all of these unclean, forbidden, and unlawful animals. And Jesus tells Peter, take, kill, and eat. Peter is hesitant. And Jesus says, don't call unclean what God has called clean. Take it and eat it. So to summarize, we are not arbitrarily picking and choosing which Old Testament laws to obey and which ones not to. We are saying that the civil and the ceremonial laws of the Old Testament apply to the nation of Israel specifically for that specific time period. Finally, I would also say that Jesus summarized the law and said that all of the law and the prophets were summed up in this, that you love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. We call this the law of Christ, that all of the law is summed up in loving God and loving people. Now, to be sure, God gets to define what it means to love, and we must search the scriptures to know that. But all that's to say, you are being faithful and obedient to God's word when you eat pork or shrimp, but you are saying that lying or murder or sexual sin is a sin, because we follow the moral laws of God, but not the ceremonial or civil. So we're not arbitrarily saying, we're just not going to follow these because they're outdated. We're saying there's actually a biblical reason for not following these laws. That the Bible has said that they were for Israel in that time, but no longer today. We don't read the Bible as flat. We read it on its own terms. When you read it on its own terms, you can come to those sorts of conclusions. So fry up some bacon and know that you're trusting God. We'll see you guys next week for week 3, and we'll answer another question. Love you guys.